Hello. We
Hello.
have with us Chasta Hamilton. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Good. It is so great to see you and to talk with you. And Chasta is the owner of Stage Door Dance Productions in Raleigh, North Carolina, and you have two locations, which
We
is so
do.
awesome. And you are the author of the new book, Trash the Trophies, which does that come out on August 11th?
August 11th. Yep.
Okay, so great. So I've read Trash to the Trophies beginning to end, and I absolutely love it. Love it, love it, love it. And I love when an author gives the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything. And I really feel like that's what you did in this book. And just the book aside, or you can include something from the book, what it has been a good, what has been a high from your dance life, from your dance career?
So, undoubtedly, and the book was such a good process because it has so much to do with my story, like all the way through. So, revisiting kind of all of those moments and just realizing that the definite number one thing that dance has given me is community, right? Community in the good times, in the bad times. And that's what the performing arts essentially is all about. So, the book reflects on when we were seeing that breakdown in community and how we kind of had to refocus to get that back. But it's the relationships, and it's what we give and it's what we receive that's so meaningful.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side of that, what's been kind of your low point in your dance life?
So, low points are relative, right? I always like to think of like obstacles as opportunities. But it was kind of just this phase of having this passion and something that I love so deeply, not feeling good anymore, and recognizing that and figuring out maybe how we could get back to what it really is about. And that was a low point because it was a challenge, and it was a challenge with kind of uncharted territory. But I do think that challenge of kind of navigating through that has helped in navigating through the pandemic as well, which is a challenge, a global challenge for like so many people in so many ways.
Right, absolutely. So do you mind giving us a summary of Trash the Trophies?
Yeah, so the book is called Trash the Trophies: How to Win Without Losing Your Soul. And it's basically a 12-step book that talks about my personal journey through dance and studio ownership and the competitive industry. And, the reasons why we recognized that the competitive industry wasn't a great fit for us, and how we rebranded and pivoted away from that to make sure that our facility was true to our passion and our purpose and our legacy. It's just like you were saying, Ashley, it's really intended with all of these different angles, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to be a conversation starter. Like, are we using our performing arts like to stay true to our mission, or are we doing something just because it's a box to check? And, I was feeling like I was becoming part of that machine, and I felt like what I was doing could be elevated and could be better.
Yeah. I literally have like 4 pages of notes from the book, and I just could not stop writing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a great quote. And I would write it down. And one of your first stories is, and I loved it so much because I feel like I've been there. And you told a story, you're at competition, you're winning, so things should be great. You have pink eye in both of your eyes. I mean, like, really, like, yeah, you have pink eye in both of your eyes. You are just so emotionally and physically drained. And that's kind of your pivot moment where you thought, this just isn't right. Like this should feel good because we're here, we're winning. Everyone's, should be having a great time. But here I am. I have pink eye in both of my eyes and I cannot move. And that's just kind of when you thought something has to change. And why do you think sometimes, most of the time, we have to come to that moment where we have to change? Why do you think we do that to ourselves?
Well, first off, you telling that story out loud just gave me chills
Right.
because it's so visceral.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm sitting back in the Deepak living that story that I put into the book. The 17th hour of a Saturday, pink eye in both eyes, eating junk food, not taking care of ourselves. And, I think we allow ourselves to get to that point because it's easy not to disrupt, right? It's easy to go with the flow. It doesn't create conflict or chaos because people, historically are very resistant to change. They like the familiar. They like to know what's coming. And anytime we disrupt that, there's reactions that are a byproduct. So we have to be so comfortable and confident in our belief that we can enact and enable change and be prepared for that other side of it. And it just took me longer than I would have liked to get to that point of readiness with the competitive dance industry.
Yeah, those are such great points. You're exactly right. We have to get there sometimes because we're just so afraid of change in general. You say in your book that the themes are, and I wrote this down, I wrote like so many things down. The themes are universally applicable to any person's professional and personal fulfillment. And I totally agree with that after reading this. I feel like even if you're in the dance world or not in the dance world, this gives you the push to like really go for it. Just kind of go, you know what, this is what I've been thinking for a while. And it's kind of going away from what everyone else is doing, but I really feel like I need to do it. So I don't think that this book is just for dancers and dance studios and things like that. So yeah, thank you for that.
I don't thank you. Well, thank you for that because, it's just now that people are like starting to read it. It was just me and the publishing company for like so long. And it's so nervous to sit on this and to start hearing like people's experience in reading it is like very exciting and humbling. But it's, as I went back and read it, I was just like, this really is so much bigger than dance. It's extracurricular, it's personal relationships, it's anything that could just be elevated or could maybe be better or a little more purposeful or a little more mission driven. And how do we lean into that instead of just like sitting in what is?
Right. Absolutely. So I was going to ask you just kind of give people, if they don't know, I think most people kind of are familiar with the dance competition industry, but you really dive in it and kind of put it all right there. And when you read it all together, you think, oh my gosh. So kind of give us the downsides of competition, things that you were talking about, like the cost and the time and just things like that.
Well, so it started with the complaints that I was receiving from clients, right? Clients that did want to participate, but, whether it be cost, devaluation of academics, hypersexualization, kind of gender inclusivity versus exclusivity, all of these factors, the deregulation of the industry, the return on investment. I was getting all of these questions and I didn't have a great answer. So I was like, this is something I really need to watch. And when I was writing the book, I went back and like read email after email from all of these years. And it's so evident the problems that exist. And I was a competitive dancer. So, and I talk about all of the different ways that I've lived this industry. And what always, it's just like how we started, what it comes back to is the community and the experience. So I said, what if we could take the positives that competitive dance offers and kind of flip it in a more affordable and more meaningful and accessible way, and give these children these experiences that are going to last them a lifetime and be super positive.
One thing that you mentioned is just missing class, like their academics kind of being put on the back burner. And that is so true. You said you would have to miss a big test on Friday, or a solo call would be at 6:30 in the morning. And then you would have an awards ceremony at like 1:00 in the morning the following day. And it's just very extreme. And one thing that I really like that you mentioned, you talked about the cost of just a solo entry, the cost of just one solo entry. And you talked about that, but also just the costume going into it, the choreography going into it. And you mentioned a few things that you could do in place of just doing that solo. Because I think a lot of times people do get on the track and go, well, this is what we know. This is what we've always done. This is what I've been taught to do. how else can we be in the dance world without going to competitions? And so you give a few examples of things that you can do. So do you mind sharing, just from, instead of doing one solo entry, what are some things that you can do?
We talk about, private dance lessons at your studio. I'm so big on training and preparation, or expanding that training to include like voice lessons or acting lessons, or going to see a Broadway show, because by seeing, or, a ballet or a local theater performance, because by experiencing live performances, not only do we gain empathy and understanding, we're also supporting arts and seeing, an end product. And that was another problem that I had with the industry, was that it doesn't necessarily duplicate the professional performance experience.
Right, absolutely. Why do you think competitions and being in the competitive world is so important to some people?
That's the question that I just can't figure out. But I think a lot of times identity gets tied up in it, right? And it becomes just kind of this pressure of, this is my identity. What label will I have if I'm not becoming like this outstanding dancer or this top soloist? Where will I get that notoriety from? But I think what's important is that we are practicing and pushing towards just a life rooted in excellence versus outcome oriented awards. Because, as there are no awards for just living a good life every day or like navigating challenges. And I think we want to teach our students to be adaptable and resilient and smart and steadfast. And I'm just not sure the industry in its current state is doing that.
Right, absolutely. And just, you mentioned this as well, and I talked about this earlier, just the cost behind going to competitions. And so you're performing the same pieces over and over, and just what you can do instead of doing that all of the time. So how do you think competition studios and choreographers and teachers, how do you think they will react to this book?
I mean, I hope it's with a level of excitement and intrigue. Because I participated too, and it's certainly meant to just be a conversation starter. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm speaking down towards anything, but this was just the experience that I lived and how it has paid off for us. And, it's just like we were saying, I think people get stuck in like, this is what everyone's doing. This is what's working. Why do something else? But it's also a really exciting time just globally for innovation and creativity and changing things up and doing things in new ways. And maybe people will read the book and see that as a baseline for how they can take, their team or their studio or their extracurricular to the next level.
I think you just answered my next question too, because I was going to ask, if someone comes into this, because we've been talking about it is so ingrained in some studios and some owners' minds that they are going to go to competition and they're going to win and get all the trophies. So I was going to ask, what do you think someone who reads this book who is like a firm no, we will go to competition no matter what, it will be part of our life, what do you think they can get from this? And I think you just answered that, because I think that this book will give not only studios and programs, but just dance teachers in general, just the push that they need to rebrand in whatever way they want to. If they've been wanting to do something a little bit differently or wanting to try something new, I think it kind of gives them the push to do that. Because you said even some people didn't like what you did. Some people didn't like what you did. And you had
a lot of people didn't.
Right. Yeah. And you had to push through that. And now you have a very successful program. And that's amazing. So,
and it's pulling that Band-Aid off. It's just saying, let's commit, let's do this because this is what feels right. And a lot of times people know when something doesn't feel right. It's that gut feeling. And, I was getting that over and over again. But there was all of this push of like, no, we can't leave. Like, how will our success be defined? And eventually, they always say you reach a point where change is better than the suffering that you're experiencing. But it shouldn't have to be that way. We should feel confident enough to change ahead of the suffering, to be a little, more on the forefront. And I'm hoping that, going through this pandemic, the arts have already pivoted so many times and are experiencing change in a lot of different ways. And so this is just another piece of the conversation of how can we continue to change and continue to do what we do in really meaningful ways.
Right. Absolutely. And you give steps to doing that. You really break it down to go, this is what you do in order to do that. And also something you wrote in your book is that you're not suggesting to end all forms of competition. So you say life is a competition, and that is so true. You're not saying everyone should win and everyone should get the trophy, and that's not what you're saying at all. And so what are ways that you encourage your students to have some of the benefits that come from competitions and just natural competitions? What are some ways that you encourage them to do that?
So we're always talking about well-rounded excellence. So no matter what you want to pursue, are you going to walk out of the studio and be able to pursue it? Like if you want to apply for a full academic scholarship, is your resume going to be strong enough? If you want to go to a conservatory training, is your resume going to be strong enough? Or, if you want to create something that has social impact, are you taking those steps to reach those goals? So it's more of a conversation of how is your daily life reflecting a lifestyle of excellence versus like an on and off excellence? Because I think that consistency is so important, and dance gives us that level of discipline. So we should tap into these like exceptional benefits that dance offers our students and tap it into their life and really show them what we're offering.
Yeah, I love that.
It's so much bigger than a dance competition.
It really is. Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to kind of go and do a lightning round of questions with you and just ask you some dance related, some not, just kind of see what you're thinking, what comes to the top of your mind whenever I ask. So number one, what is your favorite TV show?
My favorite TV show. So I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do, I have a couple of shows that I really enjoyed. I really enjoy Mad Men. I really enjoyed Fosse Verdon.
I'm not seen that yet.
So good. And if you really want to kick it old school, Dawson's Creek.
Oh, yes. I love it. All right. Number two, what's your favorite account to follow on Instagram?
So on Instagram, I have to say at Amanda Klutz. She is former Rocket. She is like a fitness influencer now. I love her subscription series. She has a dancer arm series that has my arms looking better than they've ever looked.
Nice.
So, she has been my quarantine workout girl. So her Instagram is spot on.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go. I love the Rockettes. I've always had this thing. The Rockettes I've always wanted to be a Rockette, like since I was little, but I'm not tall enough. So I've always had this, they're just out of reach, the Rockettes. So I love everything about them. I think they're so great.
And her fitness is so dance-based, which makes it fun. I am not a run on the treadmill kind of girl or that type of stuff, but her stuff, cardio dance, jump rope, dancer arms, like I'm here for it and I can't recommend it enough.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, number three, what's your favorite trip you've ever taken?
So I did a Europe trip in 2018, and Amsterdam is just dreamy. And I have to tell you, I wanted to go to Amsterdam because of reading The Fault in the Stars.
Yes.
And it lived up to every fantasy in my mind. I did it like John, my husband, he and I went, and he had this like candlelight canal trip for my birthday, and we stayed in a houseboat. I mean, it was spectacular. So I can't recommend Amsterdam enough. It's truly gorgeous.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. I hope one day we'll get back to traveling again. I can go visit there. Yes. I'm dreaming
of all of the days to travel again.
I know. And then the last question, what is your favorite dance memory? Can be from your first pair of tap shoes or whenever, yesterday.
So this it's not necessarily dance specific, but it is so the power of dance. When I moved to Raleigh in 2003, I had a hard time adjusting. So I got a dog, a Bichon Frise. Her name was Layla. And she was with me every day since I was in Raleigh. And she passed away in December of 2018. She was almost 16. I mean, lived a really amazing life, but still very, very hard. And I wasn't scheduled to go into the studio, but I'm a workaholic. So the day after she passed, I went into the studio, and my office, head to toe, hand-drawn cards, portraits of the dog, all from the kids and my staff. And it's just like, that's why we do it.
Mm-hmm. That's it right there. The community and bringing everything together. That is so amazing. Yes. Have you taken the Enneagram test before?
I get asked that so many times. I took a free one in the backseat of an Uber going to Jekyll Island in Georgia last summer. And I can't remember. I've been making up numbers when people ask me. I think it's like one or the other, but I think I might be getting it wrong. So I need to actually take it again.
You need to take it. That's your homework since you don't have anything else to do. Since you're not busy at all, that's your homework. I think you're an Enneagram 3. So you'll have to let me know later if I'm correct.
Everybody keeps trying to pin my Enneagram. So I need to take this test so I can confidently tell people.
Yep. So you can confidently tell people, and you have to report back. So
I will.
Yeah. Well, it's been so fun catching up, and I truly loved reading the book, and I'm so excited for other people to read it. And like we've been talking about, it's not just for dance studio owners. It's not just for dancers. It really is for people just wanting to make that change and to take a step, but maybe afraid to do it. And I really think it's great. So where can people find you? Where can people find the book, buy the book, all of those things?
So I have a personal website now, www.chastahamilton.com. And my social handles, there aren't very many Chasta Hamiltons out there. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And then the book, so launching on August 11th, and definitely available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, potentially eventually Target.com. We're still kind of getting all that in the works, but definitely online retailers to start. But we are just super, super excited. And I just had a meeting with the publishing company before this call, and they were like, it is really rare that we see this level of outpouring and support like this, before the book's even out. And I just think that's a testament to dance and what we do too, because we're people that care about each other, and we care about this art so, so much. So why don't we just look at it and think about how we can continue to lift and elevate it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I cannot wait for it to come out and for everyone to read it.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm so glad we got to do this today.
Same. All right. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.